So today I have an interesting story for you that is coming out of Illinois. So back in September of 1944, the small town of Mattoon, Illinois would be transformed into a scene of madness. Townsfolk would begin to report a strange, sweet smell filling their homes. Immediately following, these people would be overcome by symptoms such as weakness, nausea, paralysis, and even coughing up blood. What could have been causing such a phenomena? Well, some claim to see a man sneaking up to homes and using open windows to fill the home with gas.
Random sweet-smelling smell, causing bleeding and nausea and everything else bad, right?
The most being paralysis.
Oh, paralysis too, yeah. And people claimed that it was caused by a person who would go to houses and open windows.
Yes, in the middle of the night.
Interesting.
So, what was reported as the first incident was on September 1st, 1944. Aline Kearney was home with her 3-year-old daughter when a strong, sweet odor crept into the room. Both Aline and her daughter immediately felt ill. When Aline tried to get up from where she was, she found that her legs were paralyzed. It was then that Aline began panicking, and her calls attracted the attention of her sister, who had been staying in the home with her. The police were called, but there was no sign of a prowler.
Did her sister get the same symptoms?
I couldn't find any report of her sister even smelling the sweet odor.
That doesn't make any sense, unless it was specifically to, what was her name, Aline? Aline's room.
Yeah, but you would think that it would spread throughout the house unless it was just such a short burst of whatever it was.
Yeah.
But I did find a quote that was written in a Washington Post article that came from Aline. She stated, "I first noticed a sickening sweet odor in the bedroom, but at the time thought that it might be from the flowers outside the window. However, the odor grew stronger, and I began to feel a paralysis of my legs and lower body." This is what she would go to tell police and reporters.
Okay. So she thought it was flowers, but a smell that she'd never smelled before? That's odd.
Very.
I guess if she's assuming, what is the most logical explanation?
Yeah, trying to find something to cling to that is a good explanation as for what's happening, but you would think that you would know what the smell of your flowers is like.
Yeah. I don't think that's the point here. I think she's just trying to reason what...
Trying to rationalize.
Yeah.
But going back to the night of the attack, Aline's husband, Bert, came home not too long after the incident occurred. He supposedly spotted an unidentified male by one of the windows. The man fled, and Bert was unable to keep up with him, but he was able to give a description. This man was tall and wore dark clothing along with a tight-fitting cap.
I was about to say, where does it tie in that someone was noticed outside a window? So that explains that. So there was a person, I suppose.
Could have been, yeah.
What if it was the husband?
The husband's out here trying to gas his own wife?
Yeah.
From what I read, he was at work driving his, I think it was a taxi route at the time.
Okay, so he had an alibi. So there was no question of, maybe he did it, maybe he's a suspect.
No, there was never a question of if he was a suspect or not. When Aline's story hit the papers the next day, Urban Rafe would come forward with his story that actually was the first attack. It took place one day prior to Aline's on August 31st. He reported that late at night, he and his wife were awakened in the early morning hours by a strange odor. Both Urban and his wife felt ill, Urban reporting feeling weak and nauseous before suffering a fit of vomiting. He quickly thought of gas poisoning. He asked his wife if the stove was still on, but when she went to check, she realized she was unable to leave their bed due to paralysis.
Okay, obviously, same gas, same kind of attack.
Yes.
Okay.
There was another report that I could find on the same night of Urban's neighbors suffering from a similar issue.
They're just hitting every house and down the street and every night, right? One house every night?
I don't think that Aline and Urban were close to one another, but on that particular night, it was a set of neighbors who were attacked. Now, I want to fast forward a few days to September 5th, 1944. There was an edition of the Journal-Gazette that came out where 4 different reported attacks were included in that day's paper. It was also on this day that the first piece of physical evidence would be collected. Before this, there were only sightings of this elusive prowler. At around 10 o'clock at night, Carl and Beulah Cordes returned home. There was a piece of white cloth on their porch. Beulah was the one who picked it up and noticed an odd smell coming from the rag. She then proceeded to hold the cloth near her face and inhaled.
Did she probably passed out, right?
No, we're not using chloroform in here.
Okay.
But, I mean, my thing is if you notice something that smells weird, why would you put it to your face and smell it? Why is that your first instinct?
Get a closer smell of it. It might be more familiar if you get a good whiff.
I'm sorry, but if there's a strange rag laying on my porch, my first instinct isn't, let me take a good whiff of this and see what happens.
Well, my first instinct is, somebody left a rag here. I'm going to go throw it away.
Exactly. I'm not gonna smell it, but Beulah did. And as soon as she did this, Beulah became ill. Her face began to swell, there was a burning sensation in her mouth, and she even began to spit blood. Just like the other victims, Beulah also complained of a weak feeling and partial paralysis of her legs. It reportedly took Beulah almost 2 hours to return to normal.
I'm just trying to picture what this chemical is. I can't figure it out, because chloroform would make someone pass out. I guess there's plenty of other things that have been used for certain things that would be an explanation, but the sweet smell is throwing me off too.
That's what, in my research, I couldn't find like a name of an actual chemical that would have caused all of these things.
So they don't know what it was still?
Like I said, in what I was searching through, I could not find a list of a chemical.
Huh, that is very strange.
Oddly enough, this scrap of cloth wasn't the only thing that was found at the scene. There was a well-used skeleton key found on the sidewalk near the porch, and there was also an almost empty tube of lipstick.
That's weird. How are those correlated?
I couldn't tell you, to be perfectly honest. As I was writing this, I'm sitting here trying to figure out how this is correlated, because if there's a man running around doing all of these things, is he putting on lipstick as he's doing it?
Why lipstick? Is this might be like a clue, or like leaving his tag on something too?
This is the only place where anything like that was found that I was able to dig up. A lot of the reports were just names, or if there was a report like Urban's neighbors, there was no name given there. They wanted to remain unnamed, so it was kind of hard to find specific incidents and descriptions of what happened, but I could never find like a lot of physical evidence left behind. Now, taking a step back to what you had asked earlier, there were no chemicals found on the cloth that could explain Beulah's condition.
No chemicals found. Does that mean that there were chemicals found, but none made sense?
It was kind of ambiguous, as in, well, they didn't find any chemicals, or they couldn't find something that would have caused, because like I said, there was nothing listed, so I'm leaning more towards there wasn't anything found on the rag.
Or they had no
clue what it was.
They could tell. Maybe it was a chemical, but they didn't know what kind.
Yes. So actually, this same night that Beulah had the rag on her porch, Mrs. Leonard Burrell reported seeing a stranger break in through her bedroom window and attempt to gas her. I'm not going to speak on the validity of this claim. I think I found it on very few places, but I wanted to include it in case, yes, it is true. With all of these reports of a mad gasser on the loose, residents were becoming concerned for their safety. Patrols began forming, residents carrying pistols and shotguns as they roamed the streets. Women would carry bats and clubs when they left their homes.
It's like angry mobbing out here, and then everyone carrying something for self-defense now at this point.
Yeah, because, I mean, wouldn't you be concerned for your safety with claims of somebody running around from house to house at night, gassing people?
Yeah, obviously, yeah, I would be.
And at this point, it seemed like the police weren't doing much about any of this. So the citizens just kind of took it into their own hands. It was around this time that the FBI actually became involved, and the police urged the patrols to disband. There was also an increase of physical evidence at this time. Footprints were allegedly discovered underneath windows, and there were tears found in window screens.
All of these new things developing, and the cops tell everyone, go home. Stop doing what you're doing.
Yes. I'm going to talk more about what the police do and think later on, because it kind of, to me, seemed like there was so much happening that the police didn't know what direction to go in. So they kind of chose one and went with it.
And all the people were kind of making things more contaminated with what they were trying to find out, or their
contaminated and more chaotic, and you've got all these reports coming in. You don't know which ones are true. You don't know which ones aren't. It was kind of a lot for what was at the time an understaffed police force, because you got to think this is in the middle of one of the world wars. A lot of the able-bodied men are gone. The police force is way understaffed due to this. So, going along with that, by the 12th of September, there had been so many reports of the mad gasser, most of them were believed to be false alarms, that the police began reducing priority on these reports. There was a total of 33 people who had experienced this strange gas. This is when attention would shift from the perpetrator to a different cause for these strange happenings: mass hysteria.
I don't think mass hysteria is going to be the explanation for this.
In a way, it could be, and I want to talk about that a little bit more later on whenever you hear more about what some people have to say about this. So they were saying that there was no mad gasser, it's just a figment of everybody's imagination. Even the chief of police, C.E. Cole, would declare the case a mistake from beginning to end. He would go on to state, "We have found that large quantities of carbon tetrachloride are used in the war work done at the Atlas Imperial Diesel Engine Company plant, and that has an odor which could be carried to all parts of the city as wind shifts."
So he's minimizing everything, saying all of y'all are just over-exaggerating stuff, and the smell that you are smelling is from diesel engine production.
I don't think that it was diesel engine production. That was just the name of the plant. They were supplying things for the war.
Okay, they were repurposed, making things and supplying things for the war. Gotcha.
But yes, he was basically saying, everything that you guys have seen, no, it's not true. It's actually just fumes coming off of this gas plant that are causing all of these things that you're feeling.
I don't know how plausible that is. I think he's just trying to get them out of work to do investigations on it, but...
Well, before long, Atlas officials would chime in and deny the claims. That could just be a saving face thing.
Yeah, they're going to say, no, we aren't doing anything that's going to cause this at all.
But the police hadn't investigated the factory, and why hadn't the gas affected the town prior to these attacks? Why had all of a sudden this become an issue?
Yeah, because you would think it'd been going on for at least a year or two.
Why did the gas only affect people at night?
Yeah.
When they're over there working all of the time, why is it only at nighttime that people are smelling these things? Also, the officials stated that there hadn't been any reports of workers, even from the factory, being ill from these fumes.
So the cops are trying to play it up as, oh, this is what it is, but there's no evidence at all to go on
that would support it being fumes from this factory. No, it's a finger to point.
Yeah, and they keep pointing, even though who they're pointing at is avidly against what they're saying.
Yeah. Now, I want to tell you about the last reported attack of this mad gasser, and this is where things are going to get a little bit weird in the story. So this last attack occurred on September 13th. Mrs. Bertha Bench and her son Orville were at home when they were attacked. Surprisingly enough, they happened to describe the attacker as a woman dressed in men's clothing. This person then proceeded to spray gas into a bedroom window. The following morning, there were footprints in the dirt underneath the windows that would have been made by a woman's high-heeled shoe.
So the lipstick makes sense.
It would now, in this sense, if this was actually a legitimate attack of this mad gasser. It could have been a copycat.
Yeah.
It might not have actually happened. But if it did...
You said this was, the 13th?
The 13th of September.
The first attack happened
August 31st.
August 31st, so not even...
It's been 2 weeks.
It's been 2 weeks, yeah.
Yes.
I don't think it would be a copycatter this soon. It would still be the same person at large, I think.
It very well could be, yeah. And like I said, it would explain there being a tube of lipstick, but that doesn't explain this tall, black-clad man that was always described. This has been the only one that described it being a woman.
Well, then it would just have to be two people kind of in on it together at this point.
Okay, I'll give you that theory. I didn't think about that.
Yeah, because if it was a copycat, where is this copycatter getting this exact same chemical to use?
True, if it's not something that's readily available.
Yeah, if it's something that no one knows about, basically, at this point.
Okay, I'll give you a point on that one.
Yeah.
That was definitely not something that had crossed my mind while I was going through this. After this final attack, there were no further attacks on the town, and no perpetrator has ever been found. It is thought that these attacks were nothing but a bout of mass hysteria. Apparently, at the time, papers were writing articles about the possibility of Nazis using gas against civilians. This could have led to a heightened sense of fear amongst the civilians. And then you would think at the smallest thing, everybody's gonna jump to the conclusion of, oh my gosh, it's happening, this is real, and everybody's gonna feed off of each other's panic, causing this state of mass hysteria.
I don't feel the mass hysteria in this, though. It doesn't feel like that's the case.
I mean, I can kind of see it a little bit in people jumping on the bandwagon of, oh yeah, this happened to me. Somebody broke in my house and they sprayed this gas in my face. That one seems less plausible to me than just, there was somebody outside my house, there was this weird smell, and I can't feel my legs.
Okay, I agree with that. I think the one, like you just said, I think that one might be an exaggeration of what, like maybe they were looking for sympathy or looking for to be part of the story.
Thus, in turn, a little bit of hysteria going on.
Maybe so.
Hysteria in the form of the town forming these patrols and everything, looking for this person that may or may not be doing all of these things. They may have done some. Some of the first attacks very well could have happened, but some of the later attacks and the following attacks very well could have been a fabrication of people being in a heightened state of panic, and then the littlest thing happens and all of a sudden they're freaking out and they think, ooh, I smell it, it's here, I can't feel my legs now.
Yeah, I think it started off as something real, and the amount of times that it happened, you're probably right though. I think it continued to happen, but it was still rare.
It just spiraled into more, and the story got convoluted, and then there's just no telling up from down in it anymore. The official idea that I found circulating is that most of the symptoms that were experienced at the time can be chalked up to hysteria. Along with that, the Mattoon Journal-Gazette could have fueled the fire with their first article that stated, Mrs. Kearney and daughter first victims. This would lead people to believe that since they're the first victim, how many more are going to come, and everybody's going to start panicking because they're thinking that there's going to be this mass event with more victims.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. They kind of set it up to be...
They set the stage for...
More and more and more.
Yes.
Fair enough.
If it was a situation of mass hysteria, how would this explain away the physical evidence, though? There were footprints, the cloth, tears in the window screens, unless it's just an elaborate hysterical hoax. Were people doing this to their own houses to be able to say, oh, yep, he was here?
Gosh, I don't know. That doesn't feel like the case in this story. There might be stories where that might be the case, but in this, it feels like there's definitely the more to it.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying, and like I said, I feel like at least the first handful of these attacks, or whatever you want to call them, were true. Somebody actually thought that they were experiencing something, whether it was somebody doing this to them, or maybe, like in the case with Urban, how he thought that the stove could have been left on. That would have filled the house with gas. I don't know per se if that would lead to the symptoms that they had, but it's kind of something that makes you wonder.
Yeah, I agree with that. For the most part, I get that.
I want to kind of step away from the idea of this all being some kind of hoax or hysteria or whatever, and mentioned that I did find in a couple of places that there was somebody that they actually pointed the finger at in this town. The theory actually comes from the book The Mad Gasser of Mattoon by Scott Maruna. Farley Llewellyn was tall and thin, so he did fit the description of the perpetrator. He also graduated from college with a chemistry degree, and he had a home lab. He was apparently ostracized by the entire town, so there's kind of a motive there. He also would have had the means to create a gas that could cause such symptoms among the victims.
This is so cut and dry. It's obviously him if all of that stuff is true.
Well, I found, I don't remember where it was. There was a statement from, I think it was a chemist who said that there's no way for him to make a gas that could cause these symptoms. But that's just the talk of one person saying that.
Yeah, that doesn't...
I'm not a scientist. I don't know these things.
Yeah. I think that anyone could make something out of something. And the fact that he did have a lab and a chemistry degree, that's pretty telling.
So as cut and dry as you think that this is, I did find some statements that police had actually been keeping an eye on Farley. But he was apparently tucked away at home during some of these attacks.
Well, there's his accomplice coming into play.
That was something that I was about to touch on, was... did he have somebody working with him, or kind of the copycat in a way of, well, I'm not going to do this right now, here's what you need.
Yeah.
So, accomplice, yeah.
Yeah, it would have been accomplice, but for the times that he knew they were watching him, he would send or let someone else go do the work that he was trying to do, and no one would be none the wiser that it was him.
I'm not going to say anything for sure, because it was such a rarely mentioned thing that the cops were even watching him.
And it was the last attack, right? That was apparently a woman scene?
Yes.
So that kind of ties in perfectly with that.
He could have had multiple accomplices, because you would think that if everybody is seeing a man, you would think that it's the same person up until this point. So for it to be him and the cops watching him and say that he's at home, he would kind of have to have more than one accomplice other than this woman.
Yeah. I agree. I think that's got to be what it was.
So, before closing this story out, I want to mention to you a couple of tidbits of some theories that I read in passing, but couldn't really find enough to actually talk about. Could this have been something of extraterrestrial origin?
Oh boy,
using some kind of paralyzing gas not of this earth for their dastardly deeds? Was it aliens? You know I always gotta throw in any alien theory that I can find.
Yeah. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say it's probably not aliens. There's no other signs of it. If it was a sign of, I saw a bright light, sure, maybe we'll talk aliens, but there's no other signs of it.
Like I said, I just had to throw that one in there because why not?
Well, you know how everybody has to throw aliens as the theory for everything, almost.
Exactly. Now, this next one that I have it's a little bit more plausible than aliens. It is still by far conspiracy theory, but it's more believable than an alien gassing human beings. What if it was actually an agent of our own government doing this? The look that you're giving me right now, hang on. Hear me out here. This small Midwestern town could have been a testing site of some new gas created by our military for the war efforts.
That one's way more believable than aliens. And the military did do a lot of stuff like that during those times. With like the nukes, all of the other testing that they've done.
Now let me throw out one last little tidbit for you on this one. Isn't it kind of weird that the attacks stopped and everybody began denying everything and pointing the finger that it wasn't somebody who did it as soon as the news reached a national level?
Oh.
That one makes you think, doesn't it?
That's a ponderer right there, yeah.
Who knows? Was it hysteria? Was it somebody who was mad at the town, going around wreaking havoc because why not? Or was it government testing? Or aliens?
I'm gonna say probably not aliens. The other two theories there, solid theories. Hysteria, again, probably not in this case. I feel like there wasn't enough aspects to it to be hysteria. So I don't know.
It's kind of an open-ended.
Yeah.
But we will probably never know.
Very true. That was definitely an interesting story. Can't wait to hear what you have next time. Probably going to be some more alien theories.